All right, so of course, welcome back to one of our crown jewels of the city, Mr. Cornelius, Councilman Cornelius Johnson. I'm not saying former, because you continue to stay actively engaged, involved, and in love with the community, the city of Harrisburg. Um, it's just an honor, a distinct pleasure to again have one of our pillars of our future, not well, our current. I can't say future. I'm just simply saying, your body of work as a young man, passed in elected office, as well as a student who matriculated through the Harrisburg School District to now being in leadership roles nationwide with Chick-fil-A in the city of Atlanta. Just does our heart good to be able to say that one of our own does not think it robbery to continue to return home, remain engaged, to see the work through coming from the foundation which you led as an elected official, but more importantly as a young man and as a resident, as a black man in America who knows you're a black man in America. And I value, appreciate, and admire that.
Appreciate it.
Again, I want to just welcome you back and let's get going.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. Anytime I can come inside Music Man Multimedia Studios, it's a great time, and just be able to bust it up with you at the seat of the table is always good, man.
I appreciate that. So, what's hot? What's on you? What topics have garnered your attention most?
Yeah,
as if I need to.
Yeah, I guess like the biggest thing. I mean, coming back and kind of like first like watching the primary elections from afar, and being able to see the results. It's an exciting time in Harrisburg. I think what people have seen just through engagement through social media, or just like engagement just out in the public, especially coming out of a pandemic, that there was a lot of concerns, and I think it was voiced in multiple ways, but ultimately people voiced them at the polls, and the polls kind of brought in some new city council members, new school board members, and also a new mayor. So I think all those things, whether someone's candidate won, whether someone's candidate lost, transition is happening. And in life, everything calls for transition. It's just about how we transition, and really just trying to ensure that transition is going to be for the betterment of Harrisburg and for the people, because that's why people participate. That's why people vote, is for change. And if, now that majority of the vote went to current council president Wanda Williams, I think, she has to pick up the mantle of change and lead Harrisburg through that for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, more black people seemed engaged, which is admirable. From my perspective, we've been trying for years to make sure that we had active participants, not only in voicing concerns and possible solutions to issues, but engagement, meaning on the date of voting.
Exactly.
So we were talking earlier about whose responsibility it is to have a more educated electorate to the degree where it inspires more turnout.
Exactly.
So we had a different take on it, and I personally had said, and this is discussion. I personally said it is up to the candidates to inspire the community to want and need and to come out, and then to actually come out on election day. I fully believe that it is up to you, us, as the candidate, to inspire people to want and see a reason for coming out, and how that personally impacts them. And then even if it doesn't, in their mind, impact them, how it might impact the future generations. But you saw it, we didn't disagree. You saw it a slightly different perspective.
And I think that take on the candidate really giving people something to vote for. I think that's the most common thing that we hear. Like, people need something to vote for. If you're not giving me something to vote for, why do I even participate? But I think, we have to start to kind of change that dynamic of how we look at it, of where like it's more rather from a top-down approach from a candidate perspective, where it's more bottom-up community perspective, knowing that, hey, someone's going to win this race. And whether we like the current performance or if we don't, we as a community have to rally ourselves up to kind of really find that candidate that really aligns with the change that we want to see. Or either that's going to be a candidate who has stepped up and said, I'm going to run, or putting up your own candidate to run for you to represent you. Because I think at the end of the day, I think it's easy, especially like in some middle class communities, like where like if you are working and you have a pretty stable living situation, you may feel like, hey, politics doesn't impact my life. Or you may not even have a stable living situation where you feel like, hey, over the years where I have watched politics, it hasn't really changed for me. So with that, it brings that sense of, why should I even engage if there's nothing going to happen? But I think that's where we have to do our best as far as grassroots efforts and really breaking down the issues. And a lot of times we put that expectation on the candidate to break down the issues for us. But a lot of times you gotta remember, it's like politics is a numbers game. So they don't necessarily, some candidates, they run the numbers and realize, hey, I don't necessarily need you to participate because the numbers already favor me.
Sometimes the benefit is in the non-participation.
Exactly.
Of the full population.
Exactly. So we have to know that, hey, like, I think even inside this, this last mayor election, it was a difference between 60 votes. You see what I'm saying? I'm sure people can find 60 people that they know in Harrisburg that probably didn't vote, and so that can be something that someone can make an argument whether for or against or whatever that case may be.
There would have been 15 votes apiece to the 4 top ones, and it would have still been the same way.
Yep. No. Yep. So, but I mean, but it just shows how powerful it is. Right. Now there's going to be an opportunity where, like, hey, there's a change in leadership, and that leadership is going to control the destiny of Harrisburg for the next 4 years. And there's going to be a lot of good things that could potentially happen out of it. I think Harrisburg is positioned now to be in a strong financial position, which the city of Harrisburg probably hasn't been in a strong financial position for the past 20, 25 years. I think there's going to be opportunity, especially with COVID relief funding, where there's could be some systematic, sustainable programming or sustainable infrastructure work that the city of Harrisburg could see that they probably haven't saw in the past 25 years. So I think all of these things that are happening all started with the impact of people voting. So just knowing that there's power in voting, and then after, I think really it's the next step, and I know this is a little bit off the question, is now that people vote, that doesn't mean you get disengaged again. Right. You see what I'm saying? Right. This is where the ultimate engagement really takes place, because you voted for the issues. Now the candidate that had the most votes wins. Now let's help remind that candidate over and over again, or come along to help that candidate deliver on those issues that you wanted to see change in.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, to your point about talking about transition, I think it is incumbent upon both the incoming and the outgoing mayor to understand it's not about either one of them.
Yep.
Mayor-elect Williams coming in should want the transition to be just as flawless as Mayor who's exiting, Pappenfuss, should want and need the transition to be flawless, because ultimately they are public servants. And the bottom line is, which I think, has been overlooked. And I've said this time and time again on this show, no matter who's on here, throughout the campaign season or whatever, the power, we've said it on Clubhouse when we've been talking, I firmly believe, the power is at city council. Having a veto-proof city council, meaning 5 members on city council who is always going to be in line with the community's best interests, I think is the amount of checks and balances without being vindictive that we need. And I believe this council moving forward will have that. I don't see, pieces of past politics at play with the incoming city council, because it is, in essence, not pure and perfect.
Yeah.
By a long shot. None of us are as humans, but the amount of balance on city council, and with Mayor-elect Williams coming off of city council for 16 years, she inherently has to have a sense of respect for the process on the legislative branch.
Absolutely.
Now, on the other side, in terms of now being in the position of the administrative branch, executive branch, there's a difference between winning an election and governing.
Yep.
Now, where we are now, and I believe with council and new team and everybody, the missing piece which can't be overlooked. We don't necessarily have the judiciary, in terms of city government. We do in a way, I guess, you want to count the solicitor's office and the clerk, but I think something stronger, which is to balance off the two, is the awakening of the Harrisburg residents in terms of the city. The level of education and insightfulness and engagement and social media as a tool, I think becomes big sister, big brother in a way that has never been done before.
Absolutely.
It will not be dependent upon the Patriot News alone. It won't be on just dependent upon Channel 8, 27, 21, Fox 43. We have spaces like Music Man Multimedia Studios and other, podcasts and online platforms out there that is ensuring there's balance. So talk a little bit of, that's a long way around.
Yeah.
Saying, you have the necessary balance of government that's there, between the two branches. I'm just going to say two branches. The third component of having
community,
a woke community, if you will, speaks,
Absolutely. I think for me personally, this is just Cornelius Johnson personal view. I think I'm excited for the transition. I think anytime we have seen transitions, I was able to kind of see the transition between former mayor Linda Thompson going into current mayor Eric Pappenfuss. It's just new ideas. You get new people around the table, new ideas. It brings a sense of let's try something different. Now, I think the hope is the different that it and the purpose should be is something different that is better. We don't want to go backwards. So I'm very, very hopeful. I'm very, very prayerful. But I use those two words first. I'm gonna follow it up with another word. That the transition between the current mayor and our current city council president, with me having personal experience of working with them both, knowing and regardless how people feel about them, they love Harrisburg. You see what I'm saying? So I think knowing that their love for Harrisburg will allow for them to kind of figure out what transition plan is going to be best for Harrisburg. Not necessarily best for either one of them, but what is best for Harrisburg. And I think, I've been in times, on council where, been certain legislation that's been contentious and things of that nature. And sometimes we see people's egos and things flare up. But I think at the end of the day, they always figured out a way to kind of make it work for Harrisburg. So I hope that same type of mindset and prayerfully that same type of mindset will be able to happen even as this transition is occurring. That third word that I left out, which is the part that you were speaking to, was the accountability part. And the accountability part is where I think the community is tapping into now. I think we have seen, especially, I think what has accelerated it more was the pandemic. I think life slowed down for people where you were more at home, you were able to kind of pay attention to things more. And there was a whole different level of engagement, especially through our social media channels. Now, as we are transitioning back into what is normal, the new sense of normal, a new normal life, I think that engagement factor, majority of it will remain. And I think what we also saw is the age bracket of that engagement factor being even a lot more of like the millennials. And I would say, I think there's another. I'm a millennial, but I think there is another category after millennials. I forgot what that next generation of those 18 and probably between like 18 and 25 now, what they're called. But I think we are seeing a lot of younger people being, called out and starting to be more involved inside politics. I think that was even reflected inside like the city council race. I think there was a young lady by the name of Sarah Gaither. She was probably only 23 who ran. And I ran when I was probably 26. And so I can only imagine what it feels like to run when you're 23. So even though she wasn't victorious, she went out there, put her heart out there, put her mind out there, and was engaged. And she tapped into people, maybe her age, that wanted that same level of engagement. So our goal should be to take all the different things that we were hearing during the primaries, all different ideas out there, and really try to keep that same mindset and communication and flow out there and really turn into action. You see what I'm saying? Everyone needs to have to put down their swords. The war is over. You see what I'm saying? We know who the victories are, who the victor is. But now it doesn't mean that everyone takes their bag and go home. It's like now we rally around and remember why we were in it to begin with, and that's to better Harrisburg. And I think the ideas, the possibilities, the vision, and the future that we heard from all the candidates was in line with a better Harrisburg. Now it's just really putting that into plan and empowering and holding those who are the victors, such as our next mayor and our new city council members, to listen and then implement those visions and ideas.
I couldn't agree more, and that's where I guess one of the things that you touched on was this is the first time that Harrisburg has, in essence, been solvent, if you will, in terms of in the green, even before the CARES Act dollars and the Rescue Plan dollars. There was work on both sides.
Yep.
Especially when you were on.
Yep.
So we don't want to just gloss over that.
Yeah.
There was heavy lifting to ensure that we did not, as a city, whether that was executive branch, administrative branch, and or school district, fold at the feet of Wall Street. And that was heavy lifting. And no one person, no sole elected official can take sole credit for that. It was a team effort on all sides of government. And I'm just going to say all sides of city government.
Yep.
Because we were not helped that much at, the state and county level in terms of full transparency.
Yep.
There was not that much help given. Let's talk a bit about that heavy lifting. And when we had to come to the table, we meaning city council and the administration, not saying individuals, but just as a city government, to make sure that the community was protected from literally from Wall Street.
From Wall Street, yeah.
I mean, because people don't really believe it was Wall Street.
Yeah, and I think when it comes, the city sacrificed a lot. And when we say the city, people can think about from the city government standpoint, but those dollars and those assets and the things that the city sacrificed affects residents. So when we're looking at, you're driving down the street and you're looking at potholes, or when we're talking about infrastructure and sewer systems and things of that nature, trash bills, all of those things, water bills going up. Those are the different things that, the city is continuously to this day still sacrificing in order to, fend off Wall Street, as you were saying.
And we don't want to say Wall Street is this mythical thing.
No, it's not real. Yeah, it's real.
It is coming to collect on bonds and swaps that we 20, 30 years ago was pledged for. And we weren't even 20, 30 years down the road, but now that 20, 30 years is here,
exactly,
those individuals who pledged the full faith and tax and creditability of the residents are gone or trying to come back. And I won't touch on that part right now.
Yeah.
But trying to come back, and where are we? I mean,
if you break it down to layman's terms, the city had bad credit. There was not a soul in the world who would give us any money to even go get a bad car. You see what I'm saying? Like, it was at a point where we didn't have a good history of paying our bills. We weren't paying our bills, and we had significant bond obligations out there, and they were coming home. The people wanted their money, and I think there were courageous people on council who tried to do everything. They tried to even file for bankruptcy. The state told them, no, you couldn't even do that. We're not allowing a single city inside the state of Pennsylvania to file for bankruptcy. And then we had, Harrisburg Strong Plan. And the Strong Plan was the reason why someone can even relate it to be a Harrisburg Strong Plan, because Harrisburg had to do all the work. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't like, the state maybe had provided oversight resources and maybe looked over documents, and maybe for some smaller grants we were kind of maybe first priority, but the heavy lifting was done by city residents and city government assets. And it feels it should be a we're in a better place now, in regards to solving the structural deficit that was inside the city budget.
What does that mean
So
for those that
yeah,
are?
so what that means is every year a state government and local government has to pass a balanced budget. So let's just say, you know, I'm gonna just take it from like a layman's terms of like, hey, if I have a salary of $30,000, right, or $40,000, like at the beginning of each year, I have to determine how I'm going to spend that $30,000 or $40,000, within that year. What would happen is, um, the city would pass the budget saying, hey, this is how I'm gonna spend this 30, 40,000, but it may end up spending 50,000. So really it was causing a deficit where I was spending more than what I was actually making. So I had more obligation or debt or expenditures than the revenue that was bringing in. And so I had what is called a deficit. And around back in the 90s, I don't know how long it was going on, how the former mayor Stephen Reed, the way he used to cover the deficit, was by tapping. Here's my analogy: maybe tapping his cousin, saying, "Yo, let me hold 20,000. I'll give it back to you. I'll give it back to you." The cousin at the time was the Harrisburg Authority, and he would tap his cousin, and he realized they had some money, but his cousin was really supposed to be using the money. And I'm just giving a crazy analogy right now. The cousin was really supposed to be using the money
Don't
to
use
pay.
the analogy. Say what it was.
No, I'm gonna come back to say what it was. The cousin was supposed to use the money to pay his own bills. You see what I'm saying? Fix up his own house because he had a hole in the roof. He had a hole in the floor, but he didn't talk to his wife about it. He just said, "No, I'm just gonna give you the money because you said you'll give it back to me." So Stephen Reed was taking money from the Harrisburg Authority to fill in this deficit that was inside the city of Harrisburg budget. And what was not happening was CRW, with the water and the other assets that we had, they weren't keeping up with the responsibilities of investing back into those structural things.
And at the time, it was the Harrisburg Authority.
Yep.
At the time, which is now CRW,
Yep.
but because at the time, the Harrisburg Authority was really trash and because they had incinerators, so it was trash and water. So just
So that's what got Harrisburg into that place. And then the worst part about it was, that the mayor at the time, Stephen Reed, was also just using the money for things that was not benefiting residents. You see what I'm saying? It was more
Civil War Museum, Civil War artifacts, Sports Hall of Fame Museum, Wild West Museum, interest, exploratory interest. So I'll just say,
So
I was a little younger then. I was
still a kid.
I was starting to get good. But go ahead. Hence SciTech, Harrisburg University. I mean, we can name them.
And I would say too, like, we can look back at some of those things. I'm a SciTech graduate. Harrisburg University is building like their second building. It's like, hey, some of those assets are things that were big bets. Someone can make the arguments they're paying off now, but the cost of it. You see what I'm saying? When we're thinking about the cost of how it could have been done smarter, how it could have been done in a way where, it didn't lead a city, an entire city, when you're thinking about city government and the school district of, with a city of only about 50,000 to be close to $1 billion in debt.
I would just say if some of those people are saying that was a smart investment, they don't quite understand. Because even though you have a shiny object of a Harrisburg University or SciTech, we don't have William Penn. That was shuttered. So we don't have two co-equal tracks for education for our young people. We have one track, which is really a lie because college is not for everybody.
Not for everybody, yeah.
So understanding that, we sit with, because of the mayoral takeover, and there's a lot of black faces who helped Steve Reed at that table too, with regards to the mayoral takeover and the board of control. SciTech was going to be in existence anyway, thanks to Dr. Lisa Waller. So that was going to happen. That is the equivalent of Steve Reed and Gerald Cohn jumping in front of a parade, acting like they put it together at homecoming. So they don't get any credit for that.
Yeah.
The other side is, in my opinion, I'm just saying in my opinion, the other side is, this is what happened with SciTech and Harrisburg University should never have happened. The model is inverted from the onset. That is the equivalent of an infant birthing a mother, as opposed to a mother birthing an infant. Colleges and universities are supposed to adopt or produce high schools. High schools do not produce college and or universities. And that's the largest issue that I have, because that was, again, pledging, floating bond swaps, deals, loan extensions through the residents of Harrisburg.
Yeah.
You know, and so even though it may like, okay, the way that we enjoy sausages, we may not if we knew how they were made.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the only equivalent. I can, the analogy, we're into analogies now. The only analogy I can give is in terms of SciTech and Harrisburg University is the sausage making process. And I would also add that we had SciTech before we had SciTech. It was called Riverside, when
I was there.
People were paying Cumberland Valley, Stilton, Middletown, Susquehanna, you name it. They were paying tuition to come into our school district to attend Riverside.
Yeah, so I say all that to say where we are now in regards to just the level of engagement and the people we especially have in place when we're thinking about like this new exciting city council we have, you know, in place to kind of take the reins, is we're in a far different time. There's a lot more accountability, and I think there still needs to be increased accountability to increase that engagement across the community so we don't make mistakes of the past. I think that is key. I think that is critical. And I think that's what's going to lead to getting Harrisburg to the place that people want it to be.
So let me ask you this as a millennial. So I think, you know, as an old fat gray guy, I've been saying this, and I said this to you and others that were in elected office. I'm not running for things because I want to do for you, which wasn't done for me, which is to say, hey, here are the landmines that are out there. Here's who you should look out for. Here's why, you know, this, that, and the other. The things that weren't done for me. So I'm not bitter about it. I'm just very much in tune and aware, and I don't let go of the past. That brings me to the next topic. And I'm not going to let go of the past unless those individuals that were involved in taking Harrisburg down, you know, to the boards, the brink of bankruptcy, changes their deeds and actions and behaviors, not only their words. Okay. And so I say that to say, how do you approach and talk to your peers who may be imported into Harrisburg and have brilliant ideas, forward thinking abilities, brilliant, quite frankly, but don't understand and haven't taken the time to truly understand the grassroots of Harrisburg and the part about how we got there, because we're not here anymore. We are beyond where we were, but how we got there with the sole purpose of ensuring, to your point earlier when we talked about the transition and the new council, new mayor, new transition team and all that, making sure we never get back there again. Talk about that.
I think it's interesting, you know, especially when, you know, when people move to Harrisburg, white or black, but I'm really focused on black people. When it, you know, you come here and you're able to see like a city with so much potential. You look at like, man, like, you know, where we are in relation to other cities, Harrisburg being the capital. You're looking down at, you know, the cost of living. I'm kind of saying like, hey, it's really cheap to live here. I can feel like I can start a business here. You know, we have different assets like City Island, Riverfront Park, where if you're from other parts of the nation, you know, that is a hot commodity, you know. And then when you start to really kind of peel back the layers and kind of looking at, you know, just like the Harrisburg political scene and trying to get moving, you realize that it's a hard thing, not necessarily like a hard thing to penetrate, but, you know, first you wonder why, like, you know, what is the relationship or why people aren't so trusting? You see what I'm saying? You know, and I think it goes back to, you know, just this people not forgetting the past. You see what I'm saying? Like, hey, we got here, you know, because we have placed, you know, trust with certain with politicians or people have always told us that what we are going to be, and we're not seeing it. And I think um, what my advice to like people who are coming who are brilliant is to not be afraid to get told no once, twice, or even three times, but keep on pursuing because there's going to be someone that tells you yes, and when that person tells you yes, you're gonna be able to open the door or bring about a new opportunity that Harrisburg has never seen. I think we are starting to see that even just by some of the new organic businesses that are just popping up around the city without any type of big time, city government support or like, this person saying like, "Hey, I created the path for you." They created the path themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and now that the business is booming and now that it's hot, everyone is hopping on. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And I would say, keep it honest and keep it 100% honest. Harrisburg is a city like that. And I think people even who are born and raised here have that similar struggle of having these ideas and starting something and then feeling like, hey, I'm not getting the support that I thought I would get. And then they either take two routes. One route is they stop. You see what I'm saying? Feel like, man, people ain't supporting me. I'm just out. I'm just out the game. Or they keep going and they start to get different people who they thought would never support them start supporting them. Mm-hmm. And then they start to build a brand and then they start to get hot. Now everyone is starting to support them now. You see what I'm saying? But, that's why whether if you're from the city, you've been born and raised here, or you just got here, is don't let that first indication or those first two or three no's stop you from pursuing something. I think Harrisburg is a small city, and I think sometimes small cities kind of can block your purview of how you think and being open, And I think we are starting to get better at that. I think social media, internet, World Wide Web has been able to, even if you haven't been outside the city or seen, much of the nation, that the internet and your exposure now is allowing you to kind of see it, on a computer screen and kind of see different ideas where we are starting to be open-minded to different concepts.
It's an equalizer, I would say. Yep. We're not only constrained to our local news, literally, channel 8, 21, 5, well, not even 15 anymore, but 43, 27, when you're fed a certain narrative for so long, you lose that sense of freedom, if you will.
Yeah.
And with the advent of the internet and the basically being able to explore beyond what is laying in front of you, it's laid in front of you, or your current environment, that opens up a swath of possibilities.
Absolutely.
I always used to tell my students, your current state is not your permanent reality. Talk a bit about how you've grown from that perspective.
And I think too, it's just like when you're somewhere, you whether if it's living somewhere, being working somewhere, wherever it may be, you get conditioned to think just because it's been like this is the way it's supposed to always go. Like I had never seen it done anything different, or we never had this before. Like why we wanted to change something, So I think that's where that mindset is kind of sometimes keeps a city and keep a organization stagnant because you're so resistant to change because what has quote unquote worked for so long. And what we have to realize is that that's not what kind of elevates and moves things forward. And sometimes some change isn't good change, but you learn from that change and realize, hey, I don't need to do that again. But I wasn't afraid to kind of take that risk to try something. And I think I use that mindset whether I would say even for me, like when I just made a decision to leave Harrisburg to move to Atlanta, like that's a big change. You see what I'm saying? Like I could have easily stayed in Harrisburg. I have family, I have friends, born and raised here, went to Penn State. You see what I'm saying? I have the whole Pennsylvania Harrisburg experience. But to be able to kind of say like, hey, I'm going to move somewhere where I don't know anyone. I may have one best friend from college down there. I don't have any family, and just try it out. Is a big step, and I'm glad I had people like you and other friends and family who encouraged me to say like, hey, regardless of how it turns out, I got you. So whether that's you go down to Atlanta and you love it and you stay there forever, I got you. Whether if you go down to Atlanta and you hate it and you want to come back, I got you. And I think that's the type of mindset, type of conversations that we can have with one another. If someone's thinking about doing something, even here locally, you starting a business, I got you. Regardless if it turns out, it may turn out to be the best thing ever, or it may completely suck. But I think it's just knowing that someone's inside your corner, giving you that positive encouragement, that praise, and that support that you need. That's what's going to drive you to figure it out.
What would you say to people? Because I didn't want him to leave, but it would have been selfish to ask him to stay. So we compromised, and the goal was, if you leave, well, no, not if. Go ahead and leave under one condition, that you won't ever forget home. And not only his family, because of course he wouldn't forget his family, but you won't ever forget home, and you'll always come back and have conversations with the youth, with the community, and stay engaged. And he's done that. Not that I expected any different, and not that he's only doing it because I asked him. It's innately in him. Shout out to mom, dad, grandmom, brothers, family overall, sisters, So what would you say to a young person, maybe 5, 10 years younger than you, or 5, 10 years older than you, or even your younger self? Um, what would you say to them as a reason to stay here? And what would be some reasons that they should consider exploring other places?
Mm-hmm. So reasons to stay here. I think Harrisburg is a pond where it takes nothing to begin something. So there's so many different, like my man, like Mazon, he created his own sneaker. You see what I'm saying? Like, how many people create their own sneaker and get like a distribution for having their own sneakers? We have so many like beautiful women starting their own, having clothing. You got Demi.
Don't start naming.
Oh yeah, let me start. Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna forget someone. So we have plenty of people who are beautiful young women. You did say me. I was gonna forget somebody, but we have people where you can just. This is a place where you can really just create, and where your startup cost is low. You're close. You can get that support that you need of people rallying behind you and supporting you, and being able to try things out and really grow a brand. You also have a connection where, like, Harrisburg at the end of the day is the state capital. So when you're thinking about connections of how you can impact things from a statewide or national level, in Pennsylvania starts here in Harrisburg. We know that, hey, Philly and Pittsburgh has the numbers, but all those legislators, all those lobbyists come right down on 3rd Street,
And more importantly, about 8 to 10:30, 12 o'clock at night, they're at Hilton.
Exactly.
At the Hill Society.
Mm-hmm.
You can brush elbows with them and have conversations.
Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of opportunity to kind of network and grow even on that level. I also think, Harrisburg, even from being just like from a centrally location spot, you can tap into the lifestyle of the Baltimore to Philly, the New York to DC, and come back here and have a low cost of living. So that's what I would say, like the encouragement to stay. And also to know, this is the last thing I would say, is knowing that, this community, which you have been able to kind of been grown and nurtured, and you have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly during your time of growing here, of being able to still stay here to make a change, and to inspire that next person coming behind you and give them some of the tips of the trades, or just keeping them out of trouble, or supporting them, mentoring. There's no better place to do that than within your hometown, because it's going to have a personal connection. You're going to be able to tell, the craziest story, like, hey, man, I remember when I went to Melrose, where I was at Scott, or the time when I was at the high, and that person really be able to relate to you because you literally walked those through those same doors, or walked in those same shoes. By encouragement, if someone was looking to leave, it's just thinking about, like, man, you really get to see and experience new things. So, like new culture, new lifestyles, new opportunities. I also think it challenges your brain to um, to really kind of just grow dynamically. Because there's going to be certain things that you see and experience that you'd have never got seen and experienced here in Harrisburg. You see what I'm saying? You'd have never knew that there was a city that had this celebration or did this parade or had these type of businesses. Um, or you're going to see some things that, quite frankly, that you don't agree with or like with. You see what I'm saying? But it also challenges you to learn and grow. I think we always think about like, oh, like what are all the good and positive things? Like the world ain't all positive sometimes. Sometimes the world is that got some bad things, cruel, and has some things going on. But I think being able to grow is being able to realize how to navigate it through it all. Like you can't in a perfect world, like we don't live in a bubble, so we can't continue to be sheltered all our lives. And I think just through friction and challenges, that's how the mind grows, and that's how we become better as people. And I just think your ability not only to see and experience, but meet new people, just people from all different culture, background, different disciplines of life, and be able to get inside their head and what they're thinking, and then get inside your head and what you're thinking, and sharing and nurturing ideas to grow something bigger. To even then be able to float back here to be like, hey, like I live here, but has anyone in Harrisburg ever thought about doing this? You see what I'm saying? Because I've seen this done inside the city, and then it's booming there. So that's how you can even grow and create ideas to even come back or help a homie back here in Harrisburg to maybe start something that I never thought of. But that was through your experiences of just leaving and being somewhere else.
So we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue our dialogue and discussion that is organic around Harrisburg City, our residents, our community as a whole, education, politics, and just overall quality of life. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the other side of this commercial break. So again, you're joining us live here at A Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton, with our guest, the Honorable Cornelius Johnson. So we were talking earlier about a plethora of things, but one of the things as we begin to wind down, I guess, that I want to know is, what would you say to an 18-year-old, not that you're far beyond 18, an 18-year-old Cornelius Johnson who's just coming out of Harrisburg High, considering going to college, considering going to a trade school, that has faced this current environment that our young people are living in now? Year and a half in COVID, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, murders, the recognition of the 100 year highlight of the Tulsa massacre, outgoing administration, Trump administration, incoming Biden Harris administration, and just overall this sense of accepting yet rejecting of Black culture, i.e., the critical race theory and the 1619 Project and things that are intended to not only shine the light on past transgressions within America against systems that were set up against Black people, while still professing to still love inclusivity for all. So these 18-year-olds, these 17-year-olds are entering into a world that I'm not even using Karl, I'm saying Cornelius at 18 would be coming into.
Man, good question. I think what I would tell myself is first to be proud of who I am. Be proud of the fact that I am a Black man inside of America that is filled with so much knowledge and so much history. Be proud that my forefathers sacrificed so much for me to be inside this position that I am now, but knowing that I still have work to do. This is not the dream. We didn't. I don't think we are at the point where where Martin was down talking at the Washington Monument saying, hey, I have a dream. We're not at the dream yet, and I think we have to realize that we have to do our part in helping us to get to that dream. I will also tell myself in the midst of all the struggles and things that I see, is to also find my own peace and happiness. Because I think it's a heavy load to kind of feel like, hey, I have to, being a black man, continue to fight for our rights and being trying to make what should be a human natural thing to be treated as equal and have the same opportunity as my white counterparts, and the fight and the things I have to go through in trying to get to that point, and not realize that, hey, I also have to be happy. So like as I'm pursuing like a career opportunity, college or whatever that may be, is like, let me pursue something and do something that fulfills me inside, like makes me happy at the end of the day, because life is short. We wake up every day thinking that is guaranteed, and knowing that living every day is a luxury. And I think we were able to witness that in COVID, because there's people across all different ages, all different backgrounds that die quickly, and knowing that, life is not guaranteed. Like, let me cherish my happiness, protect my peace, and search and seek out joy, and that's with the people I surround myself with, the people who I interact with. But I can do that and do that all and be proud to be a black man in America.
And not once did I hear you say anything about money, about cars, about and that privilege of recognizing that you are innately where you are supposed to be as a fellow human being in America, inside of America.
Yeah.
With a great history and foundation based upon our ancestors, is something that allows you to have that mental clarity in terms of not only knowing who you are, but whose you are, and how to trek forward in a positive manner.
Absolutely. Because I think all about part of that happiness too is pursuing your wildest dreams. You know what I'm saying? Because I think at the end of the day, like, man, there's so many different ways in America where you can get money. There's illegal ways, then there's legal ways. You know what I'm saying? So, but a lot of people who sometimes acquire this money and wealth still lack happiness. So what does it mean? Like, what does it mean? Or
what does it mean to you?
What
happiness?
I think like the type of person I am is like, I'm about seeing the people around me happy and being surrounded by people I love. Like, I'm a type of person where I value people's time and doing things with people over any type of personal possession that I could ever buy or have, because I think time is the most valuable thing that you can have. Time is not unlimited. Like, we are here on this earth for
a moment.
For a moment. So I just think like, hey, like, you can get all this money, but look, some of the richest people in America die. Like Steve Jobs,
we're all going to die. Newsflash.
We're all going to die. Money is not going to save that. Now, yes, having financial, I'm not saying that from a naive standpoint of saying the value of money and financial freedom, but I think you get financially free to do what? Just to live. You see what I'm saying? So you're able to do the things you enjoy with the people that you love, and I think that's ultimately, the purpose of life, and being able to be, a blessing to one another. So,
and on that note, I just again like to always thank you for our stopping past Music Man Multimedia Studios. Of course, always coming home. I know we have nothing to do with that, so shout out to mom, grandma, dad, and family. But thank you for always making sure that our honorable, your regular guy, but our honorable Cornelius Johnson, who's always going to be a pillar in the community and somebody that we hold in high regards and have admiration for, always returning back home to the capital city of the Commonwealth. We can't thank you enough. We appreciate you. And one of the things I always say is I'm a firm believer, and I know you are, is you are willing to plant a seed from which a tree will grow with the clear understanding that you may not benefit from its shade. Absolutely. So I appreciate you. I love you, and I'm proud of you. My man.